sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
We go, ladies and gentlemen, on another week. March Madness is upon us. Lots of different changes in brackets, I'm sure, for a lot of people. Here on the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening, thanks for making us part of your day. Just before we get into the thick of it, Thomas Hudson, former NFL tight end, we're going to be joining him discussing Tennessee Titans, Denver Broncos, and more in the NFL. Lots of movements and also big paydays. So really excited wherever and however you may be watching, listening, on Roku, X Squad Radio. We're all over. Appreciate everybody here for joining us up and onto the program. So there's lots of things to break down up from here. So I wanted to basically recap with what I've seen from the March Madness tournament thus far. It's been exciting. It's been absolutely outstanding. And here's a few things to consider, because many people are worried about the NIL, the transfer portal. I mean, college football, of course, you're going to be dealing with a multitude of kids who all are trying to guarantee a roster spot. But we all know deep down, when it comes to a lot of coaches, like, most things will never slide with coaches. And that's the understanding of the NIL. But you got to think about how competitive in college football it has to be. And not to mention, it's also very competitive for coaches, because coaches got to go on their recruiting trees. Then they got to end up going into the transfer portal, figuring out who works best and get the best star player that you can possible who moves a needle on offense or defense. So when you think of college basketball, and I've had many respected people who have discussed about this. Matt Babcock, the NBA analyst, when it came to the draft, one of the biggest things is the discussion is most kids now are starting to come back to colleges because now the money is growing. Sponsorships, endorsement deals are also in the middle of that mix. And so it makes it much more understanding for college kids to come into the transfer portal. And then not to mention go to these powerhouse programs. We know for most schools, it doesn't always work out best up and into their favor. But I'll be honest with you, I would not even have so much of complaints after what I've seen from the March Madness tournament thus far going into the Sweet 16. Because honestly, the only teams I'm very disappointed on, I was disappointed in North Carolina. Usually you don't ever see this a whole often with this program. And right now, Duke is the powerhouse. Okay, they've got the roster. They've got the players. I'd say a couple of other rosters right now that are very competitive in this tournament. I would say UConn and Dan Hurley, how he's put together this roster. I would also say St. Paul with Rick Pitino. Like, these are really good powerhouse programs. And listen, Kansas, it's unfortunate. They got as close as they could and then fell short. But here's the thing, St. John is a really good program. They know how to get a bunch of players who can control the clock. control their destiny and play really good clutch defense when needed to. The North Carolina, it seemed like they were trying way too hard on different shot spots. And North Carolina, that's what's the most disappointing thing. You lose to VCU. But understand something. The NIL is only going to take a certain percentage of impact in college basketball as we speak. It hasn't gone through its full plethora yet. So people that are freaking out about the NIL and then all this other stuff thinking that it's going to destroy college sports, you're not really paying attention to what's really happening here. I'm barely seeing a whole lot of complaints in this March Madness tournament thus far. And it's going to continue to get better. It's going to continue to get competitive. So you got to understand something is that college basketball is going through a wave. And the only people who I truthfully am looking at as this wave is happening is the NBA. Because these players, I don't know most of them until I get to know them when they are been in the college for about 3-4 years. It's the same way that I feel about the NFL draft. I got day one starters the minute that they come in and they play their arse off and they honestly have risen up their draft stocks. I know people feel like, the scouting combine doesn't mean anything. Well, for players who aren't going to be guaranteed day one starters, could be day two, could be day three, could be undrafted. Nothing in life is ever promised. Nothing in life is ever guaranteed. The only thing is you got to put in a lot of the work. And people that think that the NIL is truthfully going to wreck college sports as we know it, I think it truthfully is going to make college sports better. Because now you're going to get, college basketball studs who are going to be coming back for their third or their fourth years because ultimately the product is going to continue to get better. But the NBA has to get onto the side of we need to stop catering so much to a lot of these players, because the problem with this is now players are getting these maxed out contracts. You can't get out of them. I think it's ridiculous. And then at the same time, when you talk about, the tanking situation, like what's the point of tanking if I'm not going to be guaranteed the number one overall pick? In the NFL, if a team tanks, they're going to get the number one overall pick. It always depends on a certain situation and who you are honestly going to be preparing for when that time comes around. But to me, I think that college basketball has really grown its product. And with the NIL in place, your powerhouse programs are going to continue to get better and better by the minute. And remember, lots of these are also determined by who you have as a coach. Okay? Let's not forget about that either. When you've got the right coach in place to shake up a roster and get the talents that you need to, whether it's in the recruitment class or it's in the transfer portal, either way, it's going to determine how motivated your coach is going to be based upon the people that he brings in the staff and then the players that he brings onto the court and onto the floor as your starting five. So I really have been loving this March Madness thus far. It's been exciting. It's been insane. Can't complain about that. So just recently, as we shift into the NFL, Jaxson Smith-Njigba is now the highest paid wide receiver in the league after, according to reports, where the Seattle Seahawks ended up signing their star receiver to a max $42 million per year contract. So the NFL is continuing to get competitive, and the markets continue to rise every single year. So 4 years, $168.6 million is the contract with $120 million guaranteed. So what does this mean right now for the Seahawks? They've got a really good young team, a really determined young head coach. Mike McDonald, after winning a Super Bowl, this team looks determined and driven. The other thing is, too, is the Seattle Seahawks also retained one of their wide receivers who people thought he was going to end up leaving the building, Jake Bobo. So they are keeping a majority of their core minus Kenneth Walker. That's the only person. Seattle right now, this is one of the things you have to understand about their build. They trust and love Sam Darnold. Okay, and Sam has come a long way since previously in the places that he's been in. But what's true about what's happening in Seattle, you got Zach Charbonnet, you're not paying much. You may end up drafting a running back in this class. And on top of all of that, you got a defense you're barely paying. So Nick Emenwari, you let Tariq Woolen go. You had a bunch of other really good young edge rushers and your defensive front. And then one of the big things John Snyder was able to do was he was able to establish the offensive line. So what you got to think, Seattle right now is on a high. They are on a big-time high. And I love with what the Seahawks have been doing in the last couple of years because it proved to a lot of people Seattle's fan base, like their culture is very strong. There's no stopping this organization for quite some time. But remember, they are in talks about the selling of the franchise, and whomever ends up buying this organization, you do know that there's going to be a much bigger payout afterward. So it all depends. And if you think about it, because I'll discuss this a little bit later on the program, but I basically was questioned this about patience when it comes to franchises and ownerships, about how many of these franchise owners are willingly and competitively patient with 3-5-year plans. I would make the argument many of them are. And the thing about the Seattle Seahawks was after Pete Carroll left, they knew they needed a little of a shift. And Pete Carroll got him 2 Super Bowl appearances, winning 1, should have been 2. We all knew what happened from there. But Mike McDonald got him a winning record and then got him a Super Bowl victory on top of everything with a quarterback that many people had questions whether or not he is he's a franchise quarterback. So I would say Seattle right now is the team that many people, when you look at establishing your franchise and you're looking to build around your roster, I would look at what Seattle's done. GM is competitive. Head coach is young, hungry, and motivated. And the ownership beforehand was willingly patient, and their fan bases now have grown bigger and stronger than ever to where it's impacted. Hockey is now officially in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest. The Mariners right now have the best odds of potentially being a World Series team. And so things are good in Seattle. The only thing that's missing is the Supersonics. That's the only team that's missing thus far. So things are really good in Seattle today. But as far as for Jaxson Smith-Njigba, they're paying their star receiver because I think the anticipation is they drafted a quarterback, and on top of what they've built together for their roster builds, I think it's clear that the argument here is that this team is going to be the team to beat in the NFC next to the Rams, who put all of their chips in. They put all the chips on the table. I think San Francisco will also be competitive. I also do think there's going to be some trickles in the NFC South. And as far as the NFC North, Chicago looks very competitive. Minnesota got a new quarterback. Green Bay, what are they going to look like in the next couple of years? And then the NFC East, I mean, you got Philadelphia competitive on defense, the Giants with a new head coach. Anything is possible from this point forward. So good stuff. But JSN, now the highest paid receiver and surpassing Jamar Chase with $40 million a year. I will make the argument that even if people believe this is an overpay, it's breaking records in the NFL with contracts every single year. So now JSN, highest paid wide receiver at $42 million a year. Does it break it? Yep. But you also have to look at the value and what the worth is, especially with how many years can he play competitively. Because remember, he's going on a year that completely exploded the minute that DK Metcalf was traded. So JSN, a good payday for him. People in Seattle absolutely love it. And we'll see what it's worth down the road when we get closer to it. Good stuff. Tommy Hudson around the corner. Can't wait to get his thoughts on the new look Tennessee Titans. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be exciting to see with what Robert Saleh and the rest of the organization, how they're going to really build up from the ground up what they missed out on the last couple of years. You're just tuning in up in here into the Snake Sports Talk Show. We're live up on Roku and also on X Squad Radio. Absolutely love all of you guys for tuning on in. Send me exactly your thoughts, and we'll definitely get into the conversation as well. Well, folks, 2026. But we also goals most of us are trying to reach. I would scary statistic that I found out is in the U.S., one of the leading causes of death now is lung cancer. That's right. Lung cancer has now trumped many of the other leading causes of death in the United States. And most of those things are linked to cigarettes, to chew, and even to vaping, which causes a lot of chemicals, a lot of bacteria that can harmfully affect your lungs, causing you to have different speeches now where you may end up having where it links to throat cancer and also black tar in your lungs. It's the most disgusting and it's the harshest thing that you could think of possible. I didn't even believe it until I looked at the statistics. But one of our partnerships that we have, Slapple, slaps all of those nicotine cravings that you have, that spark in your head, by their longer-lasting, flavorful nicotine gum. It's the best that you can get. Slapple comes in 6 different flavors, from lemon to sour apple to mint to peach and watermelon. There are many other flavors. They're very delicious. Comes in a tin, 40 pieces in each tin. And also, check it out for yourself. See what you think. If you love it, link in the description to get you more and get you hooked up and to help you to reach your goals, because we know you're not in it alone. And at the same time, it's hard to break away from a lot of habits. But if you're needing the extra help to get you to quit smoking, to quit vaping, and quit chewing, slap your nicotine cravings with Slapple today.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Tommy Hudson up and around the corner here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Welcome back. So there was a question that was posed when talking about the Miami Dolphins and their complete and entire rebuild with now Jeff Hafley at the helm. So first and foremost, because the question was asked about what owners honestly have the patience of a 3 to 5 year build. Have you looked at Arthur Smith or Arthur Blank? I apologize. Have you looked at Stephen Ross? Have you looked at the owner of the Seattle Seahawks? Have you watched the owner of the have you watched Jeffrey Lurie? Have you watched a lot of these different owners who have made strong culture builds? Not to mention the Hunt family. They've waited years until Andy Reid arrived, reshaped the entirety of the offense, got Alex Smith to be competitive. There are many owners who are willing to be patient. This is actually the first time, and I think we've ever seen, of Dave Tepper, the owner of the Carolina Panthers, actually be healthy enough to be patient and let this thing grow. Because now they get into a playoff, almost nearly beating the Rams. So there are organizations who are very willing to be patient on the build. So let's take Stephen Ross, for example, because Stephen Ross has all the money in the world. And you're in South Beach, you're in Miami. So the one thing about this is they signed Jeff Hafley as their head coach, and they go and get a new GM. Now remember, ownerships, a lot of them come from various different walks of life, because many of them can be techie guys. These are guys that, own tech companies, that run different security firms, or so on and so forth. That's within the technology world. There's a lot of them. And I'll give you, for instance, you even look at the owner of the Utah Jazz. He's very, very patient because he realizes, look, we want to entertain our fan base. We also want to entertain the fact of we will be competitive at some point, but give us a little bit of time. It's not that, there's a difference between an ownership that cares and an ownership that doesn't. In fact, you look at a lot of ownerships who have struggled with their builds over the last few years. I mean, Arizona got to a Super Bowl in 2010 and lost, or in 2008, and they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it was hard watching with where the Cardinals were going the last few years. They go and get Kyler Murray as their number 1 overall pick, and they still couldn't end up building upon that. So it has really been a hard type of build, but I'll make the argument I think Arizona could have done a lot better. But with Jeff Hafley and Stephen Ross, the thing about Stephen Ross is that he's got all the money in the world. These guys aren't quite worried about it. One owner who definitely has a lot of money in the world here in Denver would be the Walton family, with all the Walmarts nationwide, because the two predominant things as far as shopping and consumer-wise would be Amazon and Walmart, two big-time corporations. So think about it this way. If the Seattle Seahawks, they find themselves a new owner, and what are the chances someone like Jeff Bezos literally owned the Seahawks? That would have been much more money in the bank. And not to mention, you now have two of the biggest corporations in the Pacific Northwest, between Amazon and Starbucks. Could you imagine that? They'd be making a killing out of it. Like, I would love to see what the valuations would be afterward. But the fact of the matter is that they chose Jeff Hafley, and he's a very, very good head coach. And he's a really good coach, period. And he's somebody that when I look at the build of what Miami's trying to do, and many people believe that even after the Jalen Waddle trade, that Denver gave up way too much and it was too rich. But Denver's in a win-now situation, and it's okay. They're not worried about it. And not to mention, they've got some money in the cap after the Russell Wilson contract is now dried out and out. So they've got plenty of times on their hands. And their defense, that defense was competitive, whether Dre Greenlaw was healthy or not. Talanoa Hufanga, you got your physical playing safety. Like, this defense, they doubled down on it all throughout the draft. So Denver is fine. Miami, they got a lot to look forward to, because here's the thing. They can go and get a receiver. They can get a bunch of pieces. There's many options on the table. So when you talk about patience, ultimately it's making sure the first year is the experimental year with a lot of these coaches. You realize that. You got to experiment. If you got the right coach based upon the system and the structure build he's putting together next to the GM you hired, because you got to go and pay these players. You got to go draft a lot of them. You got to shape up the tables. Remember, Jim Harbaugh came into a position where the Chargers, after Brandon Staley, was a mess. And then Tom Telesco gets fired on top of that. They go and get Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh, and they both are successful because they both understand the details. They both understand the nature of the business, and they also build a more physical caliber team that nobody has any business playing against. None. So that's why when it comes to these things, when you get a coach, it's a 3-5 year plan every time. First year's experimental. Second year becomes, okay, we now have a winning track record and have reestablished our culture. What do we do to double down on that? You start making up some moves that are going to continue to draw you on the path of relevancy. And the third year should be the booming year. That should be the year in which you've established 2 years, getting very aggressive in year 3, and continue making all the winning track records from here on out. How do you think Mike Tomlin lasted this long? How do you think John Harbaugh spent 18 years in Baltimore? How do you think Andy Reid has stuck around for so long? And he's had 2 long tenures between Philly and Kansas City. Like, you got to understand, it's a what have you done for me league. It doesn't, and this is the thing, not always do these plans always pan out for other organizations, but that often determines by what your organization, your owner does. So that's always the deal. And every business, every corporation in America all realize what this is. Because your business ain't going to grow if you got an owner who's stubborn, incompetent, and doesn't quite understand the valuation and numbers. That's where a lot of these businesses start to tank. And I even watch a lot of entrepreneurs up and on Shark Tank all the time. And many of their valuations I question so much. And if the product themselves are going to last. Because ultimately, it's not always just about the product. It's about how the entrepreneur makes the moves that they need to further grow, see the valuation increase, and then make a lot of the bigger boy decisions afterward once you've accumulated a lot of profit. And that's where most of these NFL teams, they're competitive. You got a salary cap. And a lot of these teams, they're teams that actually address the problems and some that don't. And those that don't address the problems is why they don't make the playoffs that very easily, and they're mostly a top 10 team in the draft picks. So that's why it's a 3-5 year plan with these coaches, and as it should be, because every system's different, every owner's different. You got to be willing to be patient through this, because otherwise it's just never going to benefit for you if you're someone like Dave Tepper, who at one point was incompetent, impatient, and was kind of arrogant because the Panthers weren't even making the playoffs. And that was where a lot of the problems started to stem. And now, because a little ounce of patience happens, now the team made the playoffs and close to winning against the Rams. That should give you a lot of positives here. Time for the news.
And now, here we go. Hey everyone, it's story time. This is the Hot Press.
So lots of movements in the NFL, and of course, the movement that had just happened earlier is Jaxson Smith-Njigba had signed a 4-year, $168 million contract, a record-breaking contract extension with the Seattle Seahawks that now makes him the highest-paid wide receiver in the NFL at $42 million per year. What a humongous contract extension for a wide receiver. And once again, the records continue to break in every contract. So, and by the way, this is also impacting other wide receivers on top of all of this, because you think about Puka Nacua, who hasn't been paid yet. You think about Chris Olave, who hasn't been paid yet. You think about Emeka Egbuka, who hasn't been paid yet. So it happens all the time. So all these wide receivers, they're now starting to get the bigger bucks. And it's insane. But I love with where, the money itself is continuing to grow, and the amount of the valuation. Like, this is a humongous business in all of major sports. And so because the valuations themselves and the stocks continue to rise, that is what is really exciting about this. So I am all for it on this. So college basketball has continued to be so just exciting, very breathtaking as well, from a lot of these teams that have upset a bunch of teams. And so just recently, because St. Mary's head coach, ex-head coach, Randy Bennett, is now going to be coaching the Arizona State's basketball team, and this is really going to help them out tremendously. And so now St. Mary's is going to end up promoting Mickey McConnell now as the replacement. 5-year contract. And look, Arizona State, it's been quite a while since they had been competitive in college basketball. But for St. Mary's, this is going to be really interesting, because St. Mary's is they're a well-respected program. And Bennett, he's an Arizona native that guided St. Mary's to 12 NCAA tournament appearances since taking over in 2001. And St. Mary's has won at least a share of 4 straight WCC regular season championships and has gone to each of the past 5 NCAA tournaments and made the Sweet 16 appearance back in 2010 as a 10 seed, upsetting Villanova. So Arizona State now, they are really excited of the hiring opportunity now, and somebody with a lot of experience and respect around in the college basketball world. This should be good for Arizona State to really start to build up their rosters and build up their potential to be at least arguably the best team in their conferences. So should be interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then finally, in the NFL, last news that have come around, the Kansas City Chiefs now, after hearing about what now for Travis Kelce, we've got an answer, as Kelce and the Kansas City Chiefs have agreed to a 3-year contract extension now. It is broken down like this. It's 1 year along with 2 years on the back end that will accumulate through the entirety of the 3 years as long as Kelce continues to play. So they're taking this as a year-by-year basis here, and they'll continue to compensate, because the 1 year is $12 million with $3 million in incentives. So ultimately, he's getting a lot of that guaranteed money, but they will continue to pay it if he decides he continues to play. So it'll be 3 years total, but marking it more of a year-to-year basis. I think it's an interesting contract, but I also do think it works out for both with him and with the organization with Kansas City. Because Kansas City, they know that he's there trying to break records and he's there to be competitive. So I think this is a really interesting move. Smart move for sure. We'll get into a little bit more of that on the tail end of the show. But good for Travis Kelce and good for the Kansas City Chiefs to come together on a deal, and it was well worth it for both sides. All right, that's going to do it here for the news.
And now, here we go. Hey everyone, it's story time. This is the Hot Press.
So I was watching a couple of clips up and on to, all my social medias, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. And I was thinking about it because, again, we were talking about this a few times on the show and and basically with a lot of our interviewers, and really breaking down these flag football games, and eventually that's going to be in the bigger stage in the Olympics. So 2 years from now, we'll be in Los Angeles for the Summer Olympics. Should be really entertaining and interesting. But I was watching a couple of teams, and I think this is interesting because Tom Brady was happily retired, went on and played in a flag football game. And now many people know flag football, all it is that you're just basically pulling flags. You're not on pads. You're not getting physical with a lot of these guys, even though the speed at times can be very hard to contain, depending on who you're playing. But I was watching this, and I'm trying to figure out how this will work as far as roster build, who would be eligible to be playing and competing in the Olympics every 4 years in the summer. And, because these guys are basically all up and down to the off season for the NFL. But we also know that sometimes with these players, because these are all choices. I even talked about this already with the USA baseball team. Is a lot of these players, it's all about the choices. Okay. And that is where, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But these players choose to play into these types of competitions because it's going to mean a lot of things to them. One could mean another opportunity of playing into the NFL, even though you're not in pads, and shows how healthy, shows how competitive you still are. And that's usually where that will lead up to. Now, remember, you got spring football that's coming up around the corner, and I'm excited about that. The UFL, lots of really good talented athletes in this league. And a lot of them, even with the relationship with the NFL, has really worked out, and it's panned out really well. So I just think with the flag football game, it's entertaining for sure. But I think at the same time, these guys aren't even in pads. They're kind of just playing a little bit more of the flag football game that they would be playing in the Pro Bowl, which nobody at all pays a hell of a lot of close attention to. So that really just, that's just basically what it is. So we're going to be taking a quick break up from here. When we come back, we'll be discussing more about the Travis Kelce signing. Plus, I really have some things to say about the United States baseball team, because honestly, even in a World Baseball Classic type of setting, there were some things that, again, I try to keep this as PG as I possibly can, because I know these guys are athletes. I know these guys think about the bigger picture of the season, but that's going to be really solely determined on them. You can't really vouch for so many of them if this is the choices that they're making. And again, I'm sure I'm probably going to get pushback I'm sure of it. And I understand where people will push back up and on it. So I'll have my thoughts up and onto this here coming up after the break.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket, and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
All right. So a couple things I got to get up and off of my chest after watching the World Baseball Classic, which was absolutely electrifying this year. And congratulations to Venezuela for winning the tournament. I watched all those teams. Okay, let's take the United States off the equation here for a second. But I watched every international team. And all these international teams have pros who are in Major League Baseball, also have pros who are in the minor league systems of Major League teams, and even youngsters who haven't gotten a fair shot in the Major League Baseball realm, even in the international pool, but eventually now they'll get a lot of exposure from scouts, and they'll be signed to future contracts. The World Baseball Classic, and many people have argued about this, but it's entertaining. And you got to think about what the NHL was able to do. And there's a conversation right now about the future of the NHL when it comes to the All-Star games. Do you replace that with the Four Nations tournament? Because you watched how motivated every single one of these players were. And hockey, the community is very tight and strong. It's like this. And the thing about the World Baseball Classic is it may not be in the Olympic stage, but it feels a lot like it because you're playing and representing for your country, and you're also playing with the opportunity to either play in any different league nationwide. You got the KBO, the Japanese league, the Mexican league, even the Dominican leagues. There's leagues all around the world, and they're continuing to build their future, their foundation. It's exciting all the way around. But I'm not trying to say that the United States didn't want it more. But here's the thing. Lots of these professional athletes, these are smart people, okay? They understand the situation and the risk that they find themselves in when they're competing in a stage like this. All right? And my only biggest problem more than anything else is whenever you get competitors who want to come in to compete and doesn't really want to compete because, well, it was stated up and on our contract and, I cared more. Listen, the World Baseball Classic is an option and a choice. If you choose to play in the World Baseball Classic and compete, then compete. If you don't have to. That's all a choice. And so when I watched the remainder of the World Baseball Classic, I was so disappointed in the fact that we kept swinging and missing several times on this lineup. And I called this on the show. If Bobby Witt does not end up getting on base and he doesn't get important base knocks, that makes it harder for guys like Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber and multiple other power hitters, even Gunnar Henderson, to drive in the runs. And Aaron Judge, who's supposedly the captain of this team, didn't do much. He went over. And many times, and as a baseball-minded person, because baseball's been my first love, is we get so caught up in the chicks dig the long ball mentality, and we think that, getting a base hit, taking a walk is so overrated. No, it's not. It's a game of chess at the end of the day. And by the way, do you know who gets the biggest pay raises more than anything? It's not the person who leads the league in home runs. You do realize that, right? It's the guy who has the best batting average in the league. Because when you're up and on base, your batting averages is close to the 400s. You are arguably baseball's hardest out. And not to mention, you're also driving it up and into the runs. So I felt bad for guys like Bryce Harper, the entire pitching staff, minus Tariq Skubal, because to me, it should be noted in the contract is that if you compete, these are the risks. Go and ask the USA hockey team, who are full of pros. Did they take that into serious consideration? Yeah, but they competed anyway because they realize it's a very tight community in hockey. And many people look at this and, many are, I'm going to get backlash for this saying that, like our players didn't care. That's not what I'm saying. I think they did compete, but in the ways of which they were trying to compete, I can't tolerate with it. Because then now you're swinging and missing. You're swinging for the fences. You're not even quite thinking about competing in the bigger stage. And United States, they always are the underdogs. Because you think about it, Dominican's lineup was loaded and stacked. Japan has great pitching, plus with Shohei Ohtani. And I'll make the argument, Italy was scrappy. Like they've got two guys from Kansas City's their farm system, and they really hit. Jack Caglione and Vinny Pasquantino. This is why I think Kansas City is honestly going to be a postseason team this year. That Italian team was very unstoppable. Then you have Venezuela with Ronald Acuna, Eugenio Suarez, Salvador Perez, Michael Garcia, and William Abreu, and they brought it. Their pitching staff, like you got to think, this pitcher literally broke in tears as he was ready to throw the pitch. He broke away in tears. And it's very meaningful to a lot of these foreign countries. What makes me excited about it is because the international pool is continuing to grow very vastly. But you got to remember when 2017, when the United States won the gold, that team was motivated. Buster Posey, Eric Hosmer, Nolan Arenado, Adam Jones, like these guys were ballers. And then not to mention, we had a really good pitching staff at that time. Marcus Stroman, Luke Gregerson, Tyler Clippard. We had a hell of a bullpen. And even with Giancarlo Stanton, they know what he was capable of. They knew he was a home run hitter. But when you're stacking your roster with a whole bunch of home run hitters that doesn't quite shoot for the gaps or go back to the basics, it really pisses me off. So again, I'm happy they came away with silver. But the other thing is, and I know it's a competitive nature for a lot of athletes, but you won a medal. Don't take those moments for granted. I've watched several of those players literally take off these medals. Every single, like a couple players took off these medals, and it looked like it didn't matter to them. So remember, every perception's different. My biggest perception, I think we did try to compete, but we weren't sticking to the simple things that worked. That's my problem. And then on top of all of that, we had guys that somewhat wanted to compete and somewhat wanted to be there. No, I'm not going to throw my chips in a bucket on a somewhat. You either are competing or you're not. It's as simple as that. And I remember listening to one of the radio shows in Detroit when the whole Tariq Skubal thing went down. One of them I really agreed with. The other one, not so much. I was ticked off because to me, it's like, it's not that simple. Of course it is. It's very cut and dry simple. If you don't think it is, then you're not really paying attention to those logics. So, again, I'm happy they competed, but they could have really dominated, and they really could have come away with gold had you had the guys that didn't just back out. And then, by the way, Mark DeRosa, that when he made the comment about Mason Miller, the fact that he didn't even end up using him in the bullpen, trying to do the Padres a favor. The Padres haven't even won a World Series in their existence. Like, I understand that you have a star player that you're obviously doing an organization's favor, but then this is why also that I think it's also kind of a clash, because you have a lot of youngsters, the 18 and unders. When I had Michael McKinry up and onto the show, we were discussing that, and he even said these 18-year-olds, they're motivated, they're driven, they want to play, not only just to represent their country, but they want a roster spot. That's what they're playing for. So I don't know. Maybe people think I'm too cutthroat and too harsh about this, but I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to BS you into this whole thought, but it's just how I feel. So Travis Kelce now, we just announced it up and onto the news a little bit earlier. And so Travis Kelce signs a 3-year contract. It's actually more of a year-to-year basis, 12 years with 1 year, $12 million, $3 million guaranteed. So it's $15 million he's going to be making. So the Kansas City Chiefs is basically doing Travis Kelce a little of a favor, as is Kelce wants to retire a Kansas City Chief. So both ends are very mutual for this. But Kansas City, you do realize that this division is shifting. So Denver, who went double down and went to the AFC Championship against New England with a powerful defense, just added a weapon. Many people think it was too rich of a trade with how much that they got Jalen Waddle. But you pair him with Cortland Sutton, you pair him with Marvin Mims, and you pair him with Troy Franklin and even Pat Bryant. I mean, they got dudes. They've also got a really good run game. As long as J.K. Dobbins stays healthy up and onto this, and R.J. Harvey, like, I think Denver really does have a shot. And they have a new offensive coordinator with Davis Webb. So Denver's competitive. The Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, all they have to do is that they get a lot of their compensatory picks, and then not to mention they're very smart with what they spend their money on. They're not idiots. They realize, look, we may have a lot of money up and in cap space, but we haven't even fully constructed the rest of our roster the way that we wanted to, which is trench warfare, physical, in your face, type defense, run game. And now with Mike McDaniel there, you will see Justin Herbert really change different ways in his game. but he's learned a thing or two. Scramble out, create space, find open receivers. That's the one way to get competitive in this league, and a lot is on the line. He's going into year 7, still without a playoff win. But good comes to those who are patient. And then the Raiders, they go and get Tyler Linderbaum. They got Clint Kubiak now at the helm. And they went and got a lot of different edge rushers. Quiddy Pay, Quay Walker. I mean, this is a really good roster. Now it's going to get better. But they have to end up addressing the offensive line. And they definitely need a weapon at wide receiver. Because Trey Tucker, good, not great. Jack Besh has a lot of development to do. And so that's why I think the Raiders, you really have to think about their situation, what they're going to do at the number 1 overall pick. But for Kansas City with Travis Kelce, I mean, Travis Kelce's been loyal and faithful to this organization since day one. And the one big thing is that there's already a developed culture and relationship between him and Patrick Mahomes. So that's the strong thing. Now, I'll make the argument. I do think that Kansas City would need to get younger at this position, but it's only going to be until due time when that happens. But I think this is going to be a good for now situation because they do have Noah Gray. They do have Jarrett Wiley. So they're going to think about a few things. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas City, they didn't come away with a running back. They might come away with a running back a little bit later because now with Kenneth Walker and Brashard Smith, they might come with one later. But I could see them be in a position to where they may get that kid from Oregon, Kenyon Sadiq, because they're going to need a young, physical, and all-around tight end because they're going to want it for the future. So, and then that's kind of the big game play because it's the middle of the field type deal. So good for both sides. I think Kansas City continues to remain competitive. So I think this is going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting season for sure. All righty, folks, that's going to hear from me tonight. Really appreciate everybody for listening in. X Squad Radio, Go2, iHeart Radio. Really appreciate all of you. Lineup in our next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Former NFL pro Mark Collins talking Giants. We got all that excitement ahead of us and many more to come. Don't miss out on the next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.